What's up, YouTube? It's been a while. Uh, Quick update. I did purchase a Michael Jordan basketball card lot with other stars too. There were over 500 Jordans, a couple pretty big cards, some pretty big autos from the 2000s, all ungraded. I did pay pretty strong for the lot or the collection. Um, I'm expecting to get it later at the end of this week, so thought I'd make some videos of a breakdown of why I purchased it. Break down certain cards. And I'm gonna send a number to PSA, so maybe some grading reveals um, and just some thoughts on buying that lot out. Um, so I made this video, or wanted to make this video, because I saw this short on YouTube, which led me down a rabbit hole through Saber baseball cards. So the premise of the article, it was done in kind of like an academic format, which is very well done with references. Um, that vintage cards, the card stock that they were made in, was acidic in nature, or is acidic in nature, and naturally over time the cards are going to degrade, and kind of indirectly saying they have an expiration date, and is there any way to preserve them? So yeah, the article notes that the vintage baseball cards at the time, with the cotton and the extracts and such, they include acidic properties like carboxylic acids. So carboxylic acid is a carbon double bonded to an oxygen to an alcohol to the R group, which is the rest of the atom. I don't know how I remember that. I have bad memories from taking organic chemistry in college. But with those acidic properties, over time, the cards will deteriorate. One thing I should note, that there was a graph in the article, which I'll show here. The graph kind of depicts over time how long the card will basically disintegrate or deteriorate down to zero. So the tricky part is, like, atoms are neither created nor destroyed. Eventually, yeah, like the papers that we'll have will shrivel down into like a small form. And maybe this is nothing new, but all cards eventually, many years, they're not finite, right? Or they're finite, right? Not infinite, and they'll disintegrate. So the graph kind of shows over time how quickly a card will deteriorate, and it takes a long time. And in our lifetime, we're not going to see it. Maybe not even in our kids' time we'll see it. I think it'll be beyond that, into the next generation. But the graph again shows a curve, an exponential downwards curve. And one kind of concept that I wanted to go over was half-life. Half-life, it's important in the medical field and the science field. It's it's the amount of time it takes for any given element or atom or something to turn into half its value. And it's an important concept in medical, so I'm in oncology. So when we administer certain drugs and medications, specifically for cancer medications, we measure what's called pharmacokinetics. And pharmacokinetics, it's measuring the amount of drug in the bloodstream. And we use the half-life formula to see how long the drug is in the bloodstream. So half-life shows, when it reaches half the amount. So if you had administered 20 milligrams, the time it takes for it to reach 10 milligrams, because over time, the less amount of drug in the body, the less efficacious it will be, or how effective it will be. And then you use that to determine when to re-administer new medication. So just kind of got me thinking, like, if the half-life of a card, in this case, I'll just show here, of the cards, and I take this graph with a grain of salt, because I'd like to see how they came up with this formula. You have to take into account like the half-life of the acidic properties itself, as well as the cardboard. But in this case, we would theoretically say that with that red dot here, a card from, let's say, I'll use T206 as an example. They were created in 1909 or 1911. The half-life would be 200 years. So from 1909, the half-life would be 2109. And at 2109, our kids will be almost 80, that's 84 years from now. So our kids will be grandparents. So it'll be our kids' kids that will see the T206 cards at its half-life. And I think half-life is important because at that point we may see like the true eye appeal or deterioration of these vintage cards, specifically from the T206 set. So it's hard to say at 200 years like what the eye appeal will be. Again, the cards won't necessarily disintegrate completely, but we'll see deterioration. I think that's one thing that the article didn't really point out so much, like what the effect could be, and again, like what formula they used to come up with this. But it got me thinking, like, do we need to preserve these cards better now? One kind of challenging or interesting thing that they noted was encapsulating the card in a slab can make it worse. And that's technically true. So if you think about a terrarium, for example, you put plants and other dirt, grass into this medium where it's blocked off from everything else, and the natural components or atoms that are circulating in the environment kind of work within itself, and it grows faster. Same thing with like mold and on strawberries in a refrigerator. If you improperly kind of store it in a plastic container, the mold will grow faster because it's just deteriorating over time faster. The half-life is kind of shortened. And that the same thing can happen with cards. If you slab something in a Sonic Seal PSA holder, you're keeping the acidic properties within that small medium. And I just wanted to show, like, what, for example, this PSA slab. So this is actually slam dunk almost champion and volleyball extraordinaire Chase Budinger. This is his RPA. But this is in one of those like little plastic inside containers. This can't be good for the card if what this article's saying is correct and true. Same thing with this BGS. So this is a Pokemon card, obviously not a vintage card, but 1999 Charizard. This is in actually one of those inner sleeves. So all BGS holders have this inner sleeve, and I was thinking, man, this can't be good. It's like a polypropylene sleeve inside, and if it's keeping the acidic nature of the card enclosed, it'll deteriorate faster, and it's pretty significant when that's the case. So is grading bad for vintage cards? It could be. We won't see the effects. Again, because if the half-life for the T206 is 200 years, I'm just using, again, that as a measure of when we may see like the eye appeal start to kind of malform. These slabs could be bad, especially the BGS slab. So it got me thinking, should there be like a call to action? Like, should we be preserving? Like, I like these vintage cards for the artifact they are, and kind of I guess I should say the me right now wants to just enjoy the eye appeal and take the card for what it is, but over time, like, I don't think about that. They're going to be sold over time. It may be my great grandkids' issues or whoever owns it later, but some of these vintage cards could really deteriorate, and we won't see that. But is also keeping them encapsulated a bad thing? Technically, even like a penny sleeve and a top loader can be bad too, because you're keeping it preserved, even though there's a little opening. I'm not saying not to penny sleeve and top load cards, but technically it's bad. I'll be curious to see actually if there can be a company that would create some type of medium for cards that can preserve it, which can truly vacuum seal it. Maybe that's an idea, but probably won't see it in our lifetime. The article does kind of note one way to preserve cards in what looks like a screw down, followed by like a buffer alkaline, almost like a soft sleeve. So an alkaline is basic in nature, which is on the higher end on the pH scale. So since the cardboard is acidic, what it'll do is counteract and keep the card preserved for longer. Technically it's true. I wouldn't actually go recommend doing this. I personally wouldn't know what would happen to a card with like the ink and the print. Will it fade the card? I don't know. But just got me thinking, like, the vintage cards that I'm buying now, like there's some high grade cards that I'm looking for, like a PSA 5, PSA 6, PSA even 7. The eye appeal is for now, but maybe it's finite and there's an expiration date. Should I be actually looking for better centered cards that are in worse condition, knowing that the card can deteriorate? I don't know. And it also got me thinking, like, man, should I snap out my cards from my slabs? Probably not going to do that right away, but something to think about just for myself. Yeah. So just some takeaways. It's true, the way the article is written, the cards, if there are acidic properties in the cards, it will deteriorate over time. We won't see it in our lifetime, but I'm just curious how that'll affect the eye appeal. And then BGS labs cannot be good for these vintage cards, especially in the enclosed kind of inner sleeve that they have. Also, eye appeal is definitely king. You can't beat centering. Like, a card will deteriorate, but the centering will remain as is. I think I'll just stress that more for when I search for cards, and I think maybe I may be searching for lower grade, well-centered cards that aren't in slabs, just to preserve the cards. And another thought that I had was like altering. I'm very much against like the Kurtz Card Care products and putting cards into like a liquid emulsification, but similar to art, like I think some of the old art they're looking to preserve, and if we see these vintage baseball cards as artifacts that we want to preserve further down the line, like I don't know, like a 52 Mantle 200 years from now, people want to preserve it. Will it be accepted that the cards are preserved in a way in liquid? I don't know. I just think it'd be an interesting kind of thought for the future. And then, as I mentioned, like a vacuum preservation company, if the cards can be put in a self-contained sleeve that's where the air is more basic in nature, maybe that can preserve the cards for longer. But in the end, like, we're just collecting for the now, and I am as well, but it just got me thinking about the future of these vintage cards. They're very different from just the quick research that I did with some of the older books, like the Gutenberg Bible. It was made with different properties from like 400 or 500 years ago, and it looks almost, those pages, some of those pages look really fresh. So yeah, just got me thinking, like, do I do something now? But it may change my collecting habits of vintage, specifically baseball cards. All right, I thought I'd go over some cards that I also picked up. First, let me just show. I picked up some 2025 Bowman Chrome NCAA football, a jumbo, and a Breaker's Delight. Don't recommend doing this. I was chasing the Bryce Underwood auto. Didn't get it. The biggest tease in the autograph spot was this Michigan helmet. Unfortunately, it was a backup. Got a couple other cool cards. This Aiden Childs color match auto. I'm actually going to send this back for product replacement because the back is pretty damaged. We'll see what I get there. Some other cards. I really like these levitation cards from Topps. They're not expensive, but they look cool. Kind of like the spotlight cards from baseball. I really like them. Those will go to grading. This is a Wembanyama. This is Rising Stars. This was given out at the All-Star game, so just the card that I was going to send for grading. An Otani Murakami pitching. This is a pretty cool art design. I also got some cool SPX cards. Here's some golds and a Kobe of some basketball. This one I got in a cheap lot. This was a real steal. Like a gold die cut Elway. Barry Sanders. And a few others here. Not in the best condition and worth grading, but just some cool cards that I thought I could add to my binder. I've also been on this kick of Shaquille O'Neal and Kobe Bryant, so some cool Shaq cards. Nothing too crazy, just some inserts from the 90s. The Jordans of these would be pretty expensive. I sent one for grading already. A couple Kobe's, nothing too crazy. So this is a cool purchase. These are criminally cheap. This is from a 90s Bulls playoff ticket. I think I got this for like $25, and it's a steal. It was against the Trailblazers, supposedly where Drexler scored a lot. Another Silas Swords auto in a black refractor. A couple Dylan Harper golds. I really like him. He's injured now. I should have waited in retrospect, but I'm going to be buying strong. I've been watching the Spurs play. He's amazing. Or I think he will be amazing in the future with the limited minutes and coming off the bench. An Ohtani Ultraviolet. Let's see. 2 raw Ohtani home field advantages from 2025. And 2 Ohtani graded in a 9 home field advantages. So should I have bought these? I don't know. I probably bought at the wrong time, but just I do want to collect some of his cards. So yeah. But yeah, those are just some of my thoughts. Thanks for watching. Let me know what you think. The article definitely did kind of alter how I think of vintage cards now and maybe how to preserve them or how to collect them. I'll put the link in the description. Thanks for watching.